Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday, March 10th, 2021. Mr. Perry here with your rundown of what's happening today. First things first, as usual, bell ringer answered up. Second, if there's a March Mammal Madness update, you can watch the recap video there. It should be in the folder for a day if there is one. Today we're going to start our first thing of notes. So what you'll find is that on Schoology there's a blank copy of our natural selection notes. It covers our entire unit, so what we're doing for all of March plus a little bit of April is mixed in there as well. But it covers everything that we're going to be doing in natural selection. We're just going to be going over the first page of things here, which is generally what is natural selection. But that is available for you there to print off. We're only doing page 1. We're doing page 2 tomorrow if you're following along with stuff. So if you print out both today and tomorrow, you'll have that ready to go for you, or you can just follow along with me in the slides and in the notes there. You'll also find a copy of the slides in the Schoology folder here today as well, and I'm going to go down and run through of what we're doing for natural selection, because first thing is, what is this natural selection business? And I'm going to have to move myself a little bit lower. I think in the bottom corner I'll be safer than up at the top. Basically what natural selection is that are you better at surviving and reproducing in your environment than other species? If so, you would have some natural selection is favoring you, and you would be good for natural selection. But officially is the process where individuals are better adapted, meaning they have better traits that focus on their environment and allow them to be better in their environment, which makes them more likely to survive. And because they're surviving, they're reproducing. And when they're reproducing, they are passing their genes on to their kids in the next generation so that they can be just as successful. And in general, that is what natural selection is going to be about. So it mentions that word adaptation. And how we consider adaptations in here is that an adaptation is something that is inherited that increases your ability to survive and reproduce in your environment. It is not something that you can do and then modify after your life. So it's not the same as like adapting to a situation, but rather when we use the full word adaptation in science, it is an adaptation that has been passed on from one generation to another that allows you to be better at something. That is what we consider to be an adaptation. It is not something that you can change on the fly. It is something that is, taken hundreds of years of generations to get passed down from one thing to another before it becomes noticeable. One of those examples would be with a giraffe's neck. There's a time that thought that giraffes just stretched their necks extremely long, and that is why they have such long necks, because they just stretched them. And the ability of stretching their necks got passed on to their babies. When, in fact, it was just that some giraffes were born with naturally longer necks, and the naturally longer neck ones ended up surviving because they ate the food, because they had more food to reach on the top of the trees and everything, as opposed to being able to stretch their neck, because that's not really a thing that even they can do. They're just born with the neck size that they have. So it's all genetics based, which is why we just finished up talking about genetics there. But you got a video there that you can watch showing another reason why giraffes have such long, powerful necks. It's a fun video. I enjoy it. So take a look at that. I can't play it over the top of my video, though, for reasons. Copyright and stuff, I'll get taken down. So make sure that you take a look at that. Watch that video in the slideshow. And if you can't get it to work, let me know. I'll send you the video clip. But there's 5 things that need to happen in order for natural selection to take place. The first thing is that there has to be what's called variation, which means there's got to be differences in your species. The difference could be anything, as long as there's a difference. That's the first thing that needs to happen. Things need to be different. Second principle, or second thing that needs to happen for natural selection to take place, is that one of those variations has to be better. Or the fancy word that we call it in science is that it's got to be favorable, which favorable basically means that you have a better chance of surviving and reproducing. It's also known as how fit the organism is, but fitness specifically deals with its environment tie-in as well. How likely is it able to survive and reproduce in its environment versus just favorable means that it just has a good trait. It doesn't matter the environment, whereas fitness includes the environment. But both of them kind of mean the same thing of surviving and reproducing. That's the theme. You've already kind of hopefully noticed that. I've said that about 4 or 5 times of surviving and reproducing, because if you're not surviving and if you're not reproducing, it doesn't matter when it comes to natural selection how good you are if you're not able to do those two things. You need to be able to pass your genes on to the next generation, basically, is what it's going after. The third principle is that there's got to be competition. If there is no competition, everybody's going to be able to survive. Competition is what creates winners and losers. It has to be some kind of struggle out there. And usually that struggle is over some kind of limited resource. So they're battling over food or water or shelter or, mates. Something they are battling over because it is a limited resource. Not everybody can have everything that they want. That's a third thing that has to happen is competition has to exist. The fourth principle, we've kind of mentioned this a couple of times as it ties into genetics, is that it's got to be a genetic-based trait, meaning that you can pass this trait on to your offspring. If it is something that you cannot pass on to your offspring, it means diddly squat, because it doesn't matter, because your kids aren't going to have it, so congratulations on you surviving, but that doesn't help your species as a whole get better, which is what we're looking at, is the population of a certain type of, butterfly or whatnot, to see how those things change. It's always more than just one person to, that would be considered for the how good or not good that something is a part of. And then the fifth principle is just how fast or slow does this happen? And this is a very slow process, usually taking hundreds and hundreds of years, if not millions of years, to get a change to actually make a meaningful impact. Yes, slowly we can see small changes, but to get an entire species to change where one type of species goes extinct and another species comes into existence takes hundreds, if not thousands of years typically to show this. And this process of going slowly is what is called gradualism. Because it gradually happens, and gradualism means slowly. So it's not going to be instant. It takes multiple generations for this stuff to happen. So a summary of everything is that the change will occur because the organisms that are the most fit will survive, which means they pass on their traits to the next generation while the others die off. So I have this diagram here over on the side, and you can see kind of on the top here. Let me move my head to the other side. There we go. You have up at the top of the screen, you see that's how it started off. It creates variations. Usually that's formed because of mutations. Mutations happen that cause variations. Some of those variations are not good. It is not good to be just the purest white one in this case. Let's say you're in a forest. If you're a white animal in a green forest, you're going to get spotted versus these darker shades there. So the darker shades pass on. More varieties end up getting created. The ones that are the least fit, the ones that have the worst time surviving, going to die off, leaving the ones that live to pass on and reproduce and do all their things for the next generation. There's another video for you to watch that shows this example between owls and actually uses the color variation that we just talked about. And then another example that we have is with our peppered moths here, which is actually going to be our lab on Friday. Is going to involve the peppered moth simulation there, where two things exist, and one is what we call selected for because of the environment. So we're going to take a look at that on Friday of this week. There's a little picture of the real deal McNeil of how one thing can blend in one environment but can change in a different environment. I circled the speckled one in red there because it's very hard to see on the speckled trees. But then we'd get to objective number 2 with Darwin. That'll be tomorrow. So let's take a look at your assignment for Wednesday here. Go to Schoology. I think I'm going to have to bring up a Schoology thing myself. Boop. There we go. There should be Schoology coming at you there. We're on Wednesday. So go to Wednesday. We'll have the Natural Selection Schoology worksheet. And it's just got some questions for you here. You got 2 attempts on it per usual, so it'll tell you what you got right or wrong. So there's stuff leading off with just our words and kind of what some of the principles are that are stated. And then you'll have this little story. So you'll read this story. This one's about polar bears, and you'll answer questions about natural selection involving the polar bears. And I got another story that's very similar, but it's about ostriches. And ostriches is natural selection and their survivability for their stuff. So that is the assignment that goes along with the notes. Tomorrow we'll be taking a look at our scientist that's involved with all of this, his name being Darwin. So we'll take a look at Darwin, what he came up with, have a little assignment that goes along with that. And then on Friday we'll finish things off with a lab activity. Hopefully you'll be back with us for that. So that's another one that's going to be very difficult for you to try to mimic at home. So hopefully you're just here with us and be able to do the activity. But with that being said, that is for Wednesday, March 10th. If you have any issues, email me. But otherwise, I'll see you later. Bye.